Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome along if it's your first time watching. Maybe it's your first time watching live because today in the UK it's a bank holiday, so we have the day off. I don't quite know what that feels like because kind of every day is working and every day is a day off somehow. So yeah, but maybe you've got some time away from doing a job that you're going out to, or maybe even a job that you're staying home to. So maybe you have some time for yourself today. Which is great news, and it's nice to see people watching. Always use the comment section. There are some questions that I've had already sent to me on Twitter and on Facebook and on Instagram, but also you please use the comment section and I'll try and get around to answering as many questions. I finished a little bit abruptly last time when we were looking at foreshortening. And the reason is I try and keep things to 30 minutes and I try and plan my time really carefully in terms of like doing enough, not doing too much. But I think I'm always quite scared that I'm not going to have enough content to fill the half an hour. But yeah, sometimes it just like seems to go past really quickly. And hopefully I'm not being too waffly. But yeah, I ended up finishing that one quite abruptly last time. So I just want to recap. We looked at foreshortening the last time. Which I think is troublesome for a lot of people. And I think people went straight away to drawing a figure. And really, I think the thing to do, first of all, is to start with a bottle. I gave it some thought after I'd mentioned the bottle at the end. And I think the thing that's really difficult is this, that you're looking at a bottle and you know that a bottle is that shape. But then when it goes into foreshortening and it goes into perspective, you end up with this really, really odd shape. If you're looking at it that way around, you end up with a strange shape. Or if you look at it that way around, you end up with a really, really strange shape. And I think the way to show you this is, I was just thinking about that, and I then did a drawing of what that bottle looks like. And yeah, again, we know that a bottle has a really, really clear shape. And then when we see that, which is a foreshortened wine bottle, it's just weird. You know, the top is bigger than the bottom. So I think start with something like that, which is sort of simple, but I find really mind-bending when we know that a bottle is this kind of long, cylindrical, upright form, and then when we draw it foreshortening, we kind of get this really strange shape. So I think in order for your mind not to play tricks on you, because I did see a few examples of some bodies that people said where they'd really tried hard with foreshortening. I think a body is always really, really difficult to draw. So just start with a bottle, start to get your mind used to the fact that your brain is telling you one thing and your eyes are telling you something else, and they have a little bit of a fight in your mind to kind of get that right. So yeah, try and do a bottle first. I think you'll find it more difficult than you think. And maybe then once you've got your head around that, then go to trying to tackle foreshortening in a body. But anyway, well done for having a go. It's always really good. I love seeing all your examples. Okay, so for today, we're going to look at freehand drawing. And what you'll need is anything to draw with. I started thinking, yeah, get a 6B pencil. And I was like, it really doesn't matter what you've got. If you've got a biro to hand, if you've got a highlight marker, if you've got like a really perfectly sharpened pencil, that's all fine. And you'll need a couple of glasses, glasses, not those kind of glasses, those kind of glasses. Be good if they were the same actually, but it can be anything. Some scissors and also an envelope, please. Right, so whilst you're going to get those ready, I'm going to do something. So what I'm going to do is try and make this a little bit easier to understand. Well, do you notice anything different about this today? Well, what you should notice is that I've given you a slightly different angle. I've given you a corner here and a corner there. Normally it's much squarer on, it's flat on. Normally the webcam and the monitor's there. So there's something a little bit different today. What I want to do is I'm going to tape out eye level for you. I'm going to start there and I'm going to go across there to that side. So that's going to take me a minute or so. So go and get your stuff while I'm doing this. I'm using a low tack tape here, so I'll be able to pull it off without pulling off too much paintwork. So I've calculated that eye level was around about there. So I'm going round a corner, down the side of my kitchen, right down to the bottom. And then once I'm there, I'm going to go across to that end. Good. So can you see that okay? Yeah, that's not too bad. Right, so that's my seated eye level. So that line comes in line with my eyes. So that's seated eye level is different from standing eye level. Now, the reason I've done that is because we know that this goes into a corner, along, into another corner, and along again. But what you see is a straight line there. So it goes a bit wonky there, but that's just my kind of bad sticking, I think. So this, even though it's coming towards you, moving away from you, so this bit is closest to the camera, then it goes back to there, then it goes along, then it goes back even further. So this bit's away from us. We see that as a straight line. So that's something I think I'd like you to hold in your mind whilst we do that. It's not terribly technical, this, but I do want to explain some stuff. So I did a video on YouTube a couple of years ago about ellipses. And you can look at it. It's in the permanent section of my YouTube channel. It's not a live version. And I was trying to explain a little bit about perspective and how we see things and stuff. So I thought I'd use this tray here to try and explain that live for you, to try and make it a little bit easier. So when this, okay, this is round, okay, just making sure you see this. This is a round object. When this round object is below eye level, so kind of like there, we see it as an ellipse. So I'm tilting it there, but when it's flat, I'm going to try and maintain it flat at all times. When it goes to eye level, so when it goes to that line, can you see what's happened to the shape? We know it's a round thing. So again, that's our brain trying to hack us and tell us that it's something different. But when it's at eye level, we read it just as a straight line. It's only when it moves below eye level that the circular form starts to show itself. The other thing, I suppose, is if it goes above eye level, we also see that as an ellipse. So a little bit weird because the camera is quite wide angle. Okay, so the ellipse changes as it moves through space. When it hits our eye level, we read it just as a straight line, and then when it goes below eye level, it retains its circular nature again. So that's going to be something we're going to explore a little bit later on. So, right, getting back to freehand. So when I've been thinking about this, I do lots of exercises with in workshops about trying to loosen people up so they're not so kind of uptight and precious about what they're doing. And you know, it's a real battle. If I say to somebody, a group of in a workshop, don't use a ruler, and there are some rulers there, they'll use a ruler. So I've been thinking about that a little bit, and I wonder why people love to use rulers and stencils and things to draw around, rather than just relying on freehand. And I think it probably goes back to people worrying too much about what other people think. I think that's like every artist who's ever tried to do anything. I probably need some therapy about this, about like why everybody's so concerned about what other people think. But I think it probably goes back to that they want to do a good job. They want to make it as good as possible. So that's a good thing. But probably worrying a little bit too much about the quick results that you get from using a ruler as opposed to doing freehand. So my take on it is like, fine, use a ruler, but actually, if you can get to draw a straight line freehand, the rulers are kind of short-term fix because you're going to do a better line straight away, but actually you're not going to get better at drawing. So a way to show you that, I've thought about it. We're not going to use a ruler, but what we are going to do, we're going to draw this apple. Okay, so I have an apple here. You can use any fruit you want. So this is the first mini exercise. So what you'll need for that is an envelope, preferably a brown envelope, and some scissors. Oh, I like having that thing on the wall there. It's good. I can kind of like frame stuff. Look at that. Boom, bang. So scissors and envelope. Right. So brown envelope, because I just thought it was more interesting than a white sheet of paper. And the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to just take the window bit off the front. I feel like this envelope might have come from HMRC, and it's been worrying me all morning because, like, you know, it's one to send them something back, and I haven't sent them something back, so God knows what's happening there. Right, so I've got a brown sheet of paper. Right, now with my apple, so I'm doing something here on purpose. I'm not saying sketch the apple, okay, because I think when you do that, you revert to old habits, good and bad. So in a normal art class, the teacher would say, okay, so here's an apple, draw the apple. This isn't a normal art class. I want to show you something different. So you get the apple. I'm just going to put it down there on my laptop. Then what I want you to do when you've got around to it, I want you to, instead of drawing it, so the thing not to do is to draw this first and then cut it out. That is like the opposite of what I want you to do. What I really would love you to do here is just draw with the scissors, because we're going to use a different part of our brain when we do that. So if we draw it first and then we cut it out, when we're drawing, we revert to type, we revert to old habits, and then when we cut it out, we stop thinking, okay? But this way, we're going to think differently about what we're doing. So this time, I'm going to use the scissors to cut out the outline of that apple. And because I'm not used to this, because that's difficult, so you can change the paper round or you can change the scissors round when you're doing this. And this allows me to follow my eye round the perimeter of the apple, and cutting rather than drawing, I just draw in a different way. So that's what I've got there, and it's not quite right yet. So I'm holding that up and I'm looking at the apple, and I know that I need to shave a bit off there. So think about it, right? When we draw something with a pencil or a paintbrush or a pen, it's an adding process, right? So we do a line and then we do another line and it's not right. We do another line and we rub out, blah, blah, blah. This is really different. So this, I suppose, is a bit like sculpture, where you start with a block of something and you take stuff away. So sculpture is kind of like, you either start with stuff like a block and you take away from it, or you add to it. So I think this is a bit like starting with a block and taking stuff away. And it's a different process. It's a different creative process that I'm using. My brain works in a different way. There's a little undulation there. And I'd really love it if you tried this, because I think you'll surprise yourself. I think you'll surprise yourself about how your brain works. And I think a bit like with the tendency with the foreshortening, there was a tendency to go, yeah, I know what's going to happen with the bottle, but really try it, because I don't think you do know what's going to happen. And this is a really brilliant exercise. It will give you a lot of confidence. You'll do something in a different way, and like, you won't have any habits to break or think, is that a good habit or a bad habit? Because you've probably not cut something out whilst you're looking at something before. You probably cut something out for a collage, but I think this is not about making a collage. So this is about, I've cut out, I don't know if that's going to work like that. I've cut out the, what does that need to go? It needs to go there. I've cut out the apple, and it's just a different way of starting to think about freehand, okay? And you can do this with anything you want. You can do it with a profile or an outline of a person, but I think, again, the really good starting place for that is an apple. So that's the mini task number one. So have some fun with that. Take your time. Doesn't matter if it's huge or small, same size, it doesn't really matter, but really look at the shape that you're cutting out from the flat sheet of paper, the envelope, and the three-dimensional object. Okay, so I think that's the first step to not worrying about perfection. And look, freehand is really good, because what it does, it projects your personality. Whereas if you do something that's perfect, it's kind of like removing your personality from something. So a straight line that somebody draws on a page is perfect and it has no personality, and I think it's really boring. So please don't be afraid of showing your personality, and sometimes that's about showing error. And error when you do art is good. We need to embrace it. And I think, like with lots of other things, you get told off for errors. But when you do art, there's lots of really, really amazing stuff that happens when you make mistakes. So please try and reframe it. Don't see it as a mistake. See it as personality. Right, I've got some things written down here. I just want to make sure I'm doing things in the right order. Yes, okay, so we're going to move on to this now. Let me just see if there are any questions. Zoe is saying, I don't have an apple to hand, but I cut out a very strong glue gun. Exactly. I've just chosen an apple because it's something simple, but you can get more complicated. That exercise is about rewiring your brain. It's not about like what you choose. Okay, so just start simple. Whatever you have to hand, have a go. Right. So this on the wall, I want to explain something. Okay, so every time I do these tutorials, I get a little bit excited, and I think it's a bit of nervous excitement, thinking everything is going to go okay, but also, if you've watched any of them, lots of bad things happen, like the internet doesn't work, the Zoom needs upgrading, and my iPad won't connect properly, or the sound doesn't work, something like that. So, I'm not super relaxed when I'm doing it. So I'm going to do a drawing here, and please just bear in mind that the state of mind that I'm in is kind of important when it comes to this. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to draw this. I'm going to draw an ellipse of this. And I was really fascinated when I was a kid about ellipses, because I found them like really kind of weird, zen, concentrating, difficult things to do. And then it takes practice. All drawing is difficult, and all drawing takes practice. I don't think I get brilliant at anything first time. But I want to think about this exercise, and I want to think about our body and what our body's doing. So the first one I'm going to do is going to be a big ellipse, and I'm going to get smaller and smaller, but I'm going to use fewer and fewer muscles. So the first ellipse, I'm going to stand here, and it's on a vertical surface, which is already like difficult. That's going to make it more difficult than doing it flat, but I can't show you it flat here. But you could do it standing and do it like this on a tabletop, and then in an ideal world there'd be an overhead camera here, and that we could do it. So the first one, I'm going to do an ellipse here, and I've no idea whether this is going to be any good or not. I'm going to start. Bit potato-like. Okay, I needed to kind of go over that line there. So that ellipse, I was using the whole of my torso, my shoulder, my upper arm, my forearm, my wrists, my hand, my fingers. So many, many muscles involved. So the next one I'm going to do is a bit smaller. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and control it a bit more. My hand is going to be on the sheet. I know I'm standing in the way. I'm sorry about that. It's difficult to get right. So that one was a little bit better. I had more control. My wrist was resting on the sheet, whereas before I was using the whole of my arm. So fewer muscles were involved. Then this one, I'm going to support just my elbow, and we'll try and get a little bit smaller. Okay, that one I felt like I had a little bit more control over. Also, I'm getting smaller, and that makes it easier. Then this one, I'm just going to use my wrist. Okay, so that's probably the best one yet. And then this last one, I'm not even going to move. Nothing's going to move from here upwards. So I'm just really going to concentrate on using my finger muscles. So I'll show you those. Unplug you a minute. Bing. So yes, you can see those. They went from that really big one to, varied success there. Some of those are better than others, but I think you can see that the most control I had was over that small one, because there were fewer muscles involved. So I know that's kind of a bit weird, isn't it? It's a bit sort of like something to do with biology or something, but I think about that. Think about the position you're in when you're drawing. You know, not everybody likes to draw an easel. I actually love standing up to draw. I think sitting down, you kind of slump into something, and if you're on a tabletop, it can be kind of more comfy, but you don't do better drawings necessarily. So think about where you are. Think about when you do a drawing, how much, like, the physicality of it. What's happening with your body? What's happening with the muscles? What's happening with the scale of what you're doing, and the scale in relation to your body that's executing the drawing. Sometimes we need to stand and be very gestural, and it feels much kind of looser, and you make more mistakes, as you can see from the big drawing. And then sometimes we need to work very finely, but that can, you know, that's not always good, working in a tight, precise, small way. So I think we need both of that, and it's a way to vary your skills by having, just being aware of it. I think, you know, being aware whether you're working on a horizontal surface or whether you're working on a vertical surface, and then, yeah, just being a little bit more aware of what your body's doing. So hopefully that's something interesting. So yes, as I said, I was very fascinated by ellipses when I was a kid, and I started thinking about that for this session. And so what I thought we would do, I thought we'd think about drawing an ellipse. It takes a lot of practice to get that right. And I want to show you something. I don't quite know how I'm going to do this. Again, I'm going to have to take you on a little journey. So I've set up something here. So I'm just going to turn my laptop around, and I'm going to, I can maybe show you there. I've set up a whole lot of, I've got every single glass out of my cupboard and set it up here. Now, if you can, I don't know, I think I just need to get rid of the light maybe. Excuse me, I'm going to just turn it off. Right, okay, so if we look at the glasses that I have here, when I'm standing and looking at the glasses at the front of the table, they appear almost like circles. And then when I look at the glasses at the back of the table, that circle changes to an ellipse. That's really similar to what I was doing with the tray. So as my eye level drops, I want you to pay special attention to this one. So this is the tallest bottle on the table. So when I'm standing up, and then when I'm sitting down, that will start to change, and that ellipse will become a line eventually when I'm at that point there. So when I'm standing looking at all these glasses in front of me, what's happening is the ones that I'm looking at the front are almost like circles, and then the ones at the back, the ellipses, are getting shallower. And of course, I can't look at this kind of 1.20 meter array of glasses in one go. So let's just look at that again. If I'm looking at ones at the front, so I'm just tilting my head down, I'm not changing eye level. So can you see those ones at the front? I can't actually see the screen anymore. They look like circles. And then as we look further back, the ellipses look like much, much shallower. So I thought what I'd do, I would do a little diagram of that and try and explain what I mean, because I think sometimes I can show you on the screen, and then sometimes it makes sense to show you via a drawing. Okay, so here's the table, and here are the glasses, and bowls, and measuring jugs, and vases. Oops, naughty. And vases. Okay, so that's the view that you get from the side. Then here is me here, and I am drawing these. So I'm drawing those, and I'm standing here and looking directly down at some of them, and then also like that. So like I said, I can't see everything in one go, but what I am seeing is some of them at the beginning, I'm looking at them, and I'm looking down on them. And then as I'm looking across the table, I'm like, nothing's changing. My eye level isn't changing, but they're going away from me. So if you have watched any of the other ones about perspective, we know that things change when they disappear into the distance. They appear to get smaller, and gaps appear to get smaller. Proportions change. Proportions get less and less as well. So that's something to bear in mind, that the same rules of perspective apply here, because things are moving away. They're moving away into the distance, and so they change. Right. So I think going back to this, I'll put that away there. Thinking about ellipses. I don't know. Shall I do another? Yeah, I don't know if I'll do another diagram. I think the task really is to set out two ellipses, two glasses, one close to you and one far away, and see whether you can. I mean, you can get 40 glasses out of your cupboards, bowls, and goodness knows what. And I'm gonna draw this later. But I think it would be good just to start with something really simple. So a glass that's towards you and a glass that's furthest away, and really think about the perspective change. Things further away from you appearing smaller. And all we're just going to focus on is ellipses. So here's another way how to do that really well. Now, if you have a glass that's got a thick rim to it, I think the first thing you could think about is that first ellipse that you draw, and then you can draw a glass from that. So you can kind of think, okay, well, there's got some sides that go down, and there's another ellipse at the bottom, whatever. But I think getting that ellipse right is hard enough in itself. And then I think the next level for that is then thinking about a thickness to that ellipse and what's happening. So we know that from this ellipse, this distance here has got to be less than this distance here, because A is closer than B. Okay, so that's a way to get that really good in terms of trying to practice drawing two ellipses inside each other. So if you want to give yourself a bit more of a challenge, that's what you should have a go at, is trying to draw the two ellipses, one inside each other, to give it some thickness. Then the other thing I think I'd like to talk about just before we finish is about how to do this in an interesting way. And I think when I've been thinking about what I'm going to do next, let's think about what materials would be good for drawing glass. So I think glass is this amazing material. So it's got this very strange ethereal quality where it's kind of there but not there. So I think that'd be really good if you reflected that in your choice of materials. So I thought what would be a really good way of doing this would either be something like a green biro, which has a very thin line, or maybe a green colored pencil, or a very thin drawing pen. And really just thinking about, if you're drawing something in a color like green, how maybe it's kind of there a little bit, but also not there. And another you probably can't even see that so much on the screen, but I'm doing a drawing in a green colored pencil, just because I think that's kind of a nice color to start exploring glass with. Because you can't draw in clear, because a clear pen doesn't exist. The other thing that I thought would be really good is if you are going to do something like this, where you think about, you have a tabletop like I have in perspective here. If I was doing this and I was needing the practice, I would start at the back and work forwards. So start at the back, and you have got plenty of time then to make mistakes. So we know that things that are farther away from us, they appear to be slightly more faded out and less strong than things that are close. So by the time you get down to drawing things that are much closer, you'll be able to draw those much more strongly, and you'll get a sense of depth there, and you'll have made all your mistakes much earlier on. So those are some tips from me about how to do this, how to start doing this, and how to get it better and as best you can, really. We've got a few minutes left. So is there a tip for drawing circles? Well, actually, Danny, I do have a video on my permanent YouTube channel about drawing circles called The Perfect Circle. And that actually uses kind of what we were talking about earlier about getting quite physical with something, using your shoulder. So have a look at that. A lot of people were asking me about just starting something. So I think drawing is really difficult. You know, I don't need to say that enough. But I think when you, a tip like what I've just given you is really good. So if you're drawing 40, 50 pieces of glassware, I don't know how much is here, there's probably about 40 things on my table. I would start at the back, because the back I can cover up with stuff that comes forward, and I'm going to get better at drawing. If I'm doing 40 of those, by the time I've got to the front, my ellipses are going to be brilliant, okay? And 100% design, drawing, art, drawing, looking, painting, all those things, it just takes practice. If you don't practice, it goes away. So you can see I need some practice drawing ellipses, but I promise you, if I've done 40 of them, by the time I get to 38, 39, 40, they're going to be much, much, much better. So really, don't despair if the first ones are rubbish. Don't scrunch it up and throw it away. Just do another one, do another one, do another one. You'll get better. I promise you, you'll get better. You'll get better at looking, you'll get more confident, your line will get better. There's lots and lots of tips that I'm giving you today about how to do this really, really well. So hopefully you have got something out of it, and hopefully you enjoyed it. And I will see you on Sunday. So I'm super excited about Sunday, because I've been asked by a very special organization and there's some very special people to do a tutorial on Sunday. So something we've not really covered before, but hopefully you will enjoy it. And I hope you have a great bank holiday and a good bank holiday weekend. So I'll see you on Sunday.